Welcome back, Razorback Nation, for episode 26 of Hawgs on the Hill, your go-to podcast for an in-depth dive into all things Arkansas Razorbacks. Join us as we dissect the victories, analyze the plays, and revel in the spirit of the Hawgs. As always, episode 26 is brought to you by Homefield. You can step into the legacy of collegiate style with Homefield's premium vintage apparel. Embrace the spirit of your alma mater or your favorite team with their meticulously crafted, comfortable, and stylish collections. Elevate your game day attire and celebrate the rich history of college sports. We're at Homefield. Tradition meets modern comfort, and every stitch you can use that promo code Variety Sports in all caps to receive 15% off that first order. Go check it out. They're always adding more collections and styles, different eras of Razorbacks, pullovers, t-shirts, jackets, hats, socks, you name it, they got it. That's all Razorback style. So go check them out today, and you can use Variety Sports in all caps to get 15% off that first order. And we're back from the bye week. Arkansas had a couple basketball games. Baylor on Saturday, and then come back home and play Troy last night. And we'll go ahead and jump into basketball before we start the football talk later on. Arkansas women's basketball actually took on Little Rock on November 11th in Little Rock, and they won that game 71-60. And we've got a lot of new names to learn here for this women's basketball team, as this is a whole new squad than last year. You know, we kind of saw the max exodus, if you will, of players leaving. You know, you had Sailor Poffenbarger leave, Talia Scott, Miriam Dowda, several of the key players leave, and you brought in a few players, transferred in some freshmen. But in this one, you had leading scorers where Izzy Higginbottom learned that name, transfer from Arkansas State. She is from Batesville, Arkansas, so a home state girl. She led the team with 24 points. You had Kiki Smith with 16 points, and then Vera Ojenyuwa with 11 points. Leading rebounder for the Arkansas Razorbacks was Vera with 11, Jenna Lawrence with 7. She is a Farmington native. And then you have Punjabi Pannon with 5 rebounds as well. And they'll next take up UT Arlington. That's actually going on right now. But quickly, while I'm getting that score update for you guys, what's your initial thoughts on this women's team this year so far? You know, they had that early loss to Fairfield, a smaller school, came in to Bud Walton, and you beat us pretty good, 81-67, but then we bounced back against East Texas A&M and then Little Rock, and we are currently up on UT Arlington 69-46 with 3:42 left in the third.
Yeah, so it's up and down. This game against Little Rock was not pretty at first. I believe we were down double digits at half or close. I can't remember what the exact score was at halftime. So they did a good job rallying back and winning this game by a decent margin of 11. So that was nice to see. Kind of similar to what the men's basketball team did last night against Troy, for example. Did not shoot the ball well in the first half, but kind of settled in, played a good second half of basketball, played a little bit better on defense. A double-double for Vera. That was pretty cool to see. So I still think this team's going to have a tough year. I don't think we're going to stack up very well with some of the upper echelon SEC teams. There is a reason why we're picked to finish last. That said, though, there is enough question marks and unknowns with some of these newer players, some of the overseas players that came over to play for this Lady Razorbacks team, that they might could surprise some people if they're able to gel together and play at a higher rate in a higher, competition level than a lot of people are expecting, just with them being so unknown. I have my doubts, I guess I could say, but I'm not the biggest Neighbors fan. That said, maybe this team, maybe he's taking a different approach and it could pay off. I don't know. There's a lot to learn from this team, and there's going to be a lot of growing that's going to have to be done with it being a very new team. Very similar story to like the men's team, just kind of different echelon of talent, for example. So I've got, some optimism that they could surprise some people and not finish last in the SEC. But by no means do I think we're going to just have some absolutely miraculous, stellar year. And I don't think we've seen that so far in these first games. We've had some okay wins. This is a good okay win here. Didn't look good at first, bounced back in the second half. And it looks like we're having a decent showing against UT Arlington, but I mean, look at the competition level we're playing. You got a lot of tough games in the SEC coming your way down the stretch that I'm a little nervous about.
Yeah, I agree 100% there. After last year, I think, with the talent that was on the team, there's a lot of questions, like you said, about Coach Mike Neighbors. You had Talia Scott at the beginning of the year going off. She's out for a little bit due to some injury issues. You had Sailor Poffenbarger that was kind of starting to break out a little bit. You had Marian Dowda. I mean, I don't know if she was necessarily being utilized properly, because you look at it, she transferred to South Carolina. You can't just be anyone and get, recruited to South Carolina with how insane that program is right now. And so for us to lose some key players like that has me questioning a lot. I know this year's team is, very new. You got a lot of transfers came in and you kind of had to. But yeah, I think there's a lot of unknown, and that's the word I think that should be used to describe this season, is unknown, because you don't really know. And I think this is going to be a key season for Mike Neighbors, and I think it's one of those years where you don't. I think you've got to make a tournament run, or at least an appearance, to save your job, because it's a hot seat year. You've been here for a while, had some talent on the teams, but just haven't got it done. We saw it last year where they went on a good run, and had some luck with bouncing back from games compared to the previous year. But, when it came down towards the end of the year and some key games that you needed to win, that just wasn't happening.
Yeah, 100%. And my gut feel is that we lost some of our best talent. And that, to me, that's one of the biggest, I don't want to say like sins or travesties or whatever, but like that's a problem if you're a coach, that you're losing some of your better talent to other teams. You're not able to retain a lot of that talent. And I understand people are going to transfer from time to time. That's just going to be the name of the game. But when like 5 of your best players, the whole Talia Scott thing with her getting injured, never really coming back, I think the writing was kind of on the wall midway through this season that she was just going to kind of ride it out to the end and not play much and go ahead and bounce out somewhere else at the end of the year. I don't know what necessarily happened. If there's locker room, I don't know. I don't know the reasons, but it is kind of a ugly story to tell when the core of your team all transferred and the majority of them all had eligibility left to come back and run it back and potentially have a pretty good team. And it just didn't materialize that way. So to your point, I don't know if this is a year that they've got to make the tournament necessarily to keep jobs. I'm curious to see like how invested the university is in this women's basketball team right now. If they're just going to kind of let it ride to be in the bottom of the SEC for a couple of years till we get some other coaching positions locked up how we want. Sam Pittman, we've all talked to her blue in the face on the what if scenarios there. So I don't know if that's kind of, it's just the women's basketball team's just not going to be good. And we're accepting that they're not going to be good or great, at least. Maybe they'll be better than we expect, but I'm not sure. I think they're kind of on the back burner right now. So we'll see as far as coaching changes and things of that nature. And there is a lot of unknowns. This team has potential to be better than what they're projected to be. And I think that could be a good sign that maybe, things are headed in the right direction, sort of. But it just, at the start of this season, at the end of last season, everything in my mind is kind of a weird taste. So we'll see. I wish them nothing but the best. And it's cool to see a couple of hometown girls on that team. I really hope they do well. That's kind of the biggest thing there. But it's going to be a tough year, I think, though.
Yeah,
like
I
I said,
agree
some of these
100%.
early games haven't just been the easiest for us. Granted, you're still learning a lot, but it's going to get hard real fast.
Yeah. Just to take a quick look, yesterday was early signing day, and you had Arkansas women's basketball sign 3 new players, all from 3 different countries, which is insane to think. And nowadays, college basketball and recruiting, we'll run through those real quick. You had Bonnie Dees, a 5'9" guard from Melbourne, Australia. She was invited to play in the WNBA All-Star Weekend as a top 40 player in the world. She chose Arkansas over Syracuse, Washington, and Mississippi State, averaged 13.8 points, 6 rebounds, 2.4 assists in the Australian FIBA 18 and under Asia Cup in China in June, and helped her nation defeat China 96-79 in the final. She shot 52.5% from the field and 75% from the free throw line, and she signed a 1-year amateur deal for the Sydney Flames of the WNBL in August. So, a guard coming in with experience, and then you have Aisha Salman Hassan, a 5'7" guard from Egypt, that she chose Arkansas over Yale and Columbia, played for the Egyptian national team. She was named MVP at the Basketball Without Borders South Africa. And then lastly, Hermione Ware, a 5'10" guard out of Cleveland, Tennessee, chose Arkansas over Cal, Florida Atlantic, James Madison, Kentucky, Alabama, Birmingham, Southern Miss, Middle Tennessee, Furman, and other programs. She was named the Class 4A state tournament MVP after she scored a career-high 29 points and had 9 rebounds during a 58-43 win over Bartlett in the title game, and she set a state tournament record for consecutive free throws made with 22.
That's pretty big on the free throws. That's pretty wild right there. But, kind of what we were just talking about, our current team, those are going to be some question mark type players that have done well outside of kind of the United States basketball world, if you will, that could come in and be way better than people expect or underperform what people expect. You just don't know. So I'm curious to see what this, it feels like an experiment almost, kind of what Mike Neighbors is trying to do right now with bringing a lot of players from overseas to come in to play college basketball. It could be a smart strategy, but you just don't know. So we'll see how it all plays out, especially if he does get another year after this year and get to coach that recruiting class that he's working on right now. So I'm curious. I'll just say that. I'm not going to say I'm like overly optimistic, but I am curious to kind of see how things go over the next year or two for this Lady Razorbacks program.
Which is a fair statement, and I agree. We'll jump over to Arkansas men's basketball. As we know, haven't had the best start. We are only 3 games in, but this team, you can tell, they're still learning to play together and things like that. And we even told you, Cal told you, we tried to emphasize that don't worry right off the bat. It's going to take some time to put it together, but I really think by the time you get to February, March, this is going to be a completely different team. But we'll jump in. Arkansas defeats Troy last night 65-49, and where this game was a tale of 2 halves. First half was absolutely terrible. Second half, they turned it around. Still have a lot of things to work on, but shot the ball much better in the second half. Leading scorers for Arkansas last night, Aduthiero and Big Z tied with 19 points each, and then you had Boogie Flan with 12 points as well. Leading rebounders, Aduthiero with 7, Brazil, Nelly Davis with 5. Note, Brazil only played 9 minutes in the first half. So, I think if he played the full game, it could have been a double-double night for him. And Billy Richmond with 3. Arkansas shot 42.9% from the field, 24-56, 43.5%, 10 of 23 from the three-point line, and 50% from the free throw line, 7 of 14. Last night, that first half was tough to watch, if we're being honest. The amount of missed dunks, the ball just flying everywhere, shots not falling. It was just, I don't know. It was a lot of fundamentals that seemed to be missing in that first half.
Yeah, I agree with that to an extent. There was some weird things happening with balls getting poked loose, losing a ball going up for a dunk, for example, bricking a dunk off the back of the rim. Part of it was chemistry related, where somebody would toss up an alley-oop and it would just slightly be out of position for somebody's reach, or their timing wouldn't be right when somebody's trying to jump. The other guy, you can tell that they haven't played together a lot. There's flashes of greatness, though, mixed in between there, and that's the stuff that's exciting to see, is when the things do click on a possession or two and you see a phenomenal display of awareness, passing ability between all your players, because even the bigs are good at passing right now. The bigs are good at shooting even. I mean, it's just you've got a lot of versatility on this team, and there's some possessions where they put it all together, and then some possessions where you got Thiero flying out of control somewhere, trying to throw a ball from one corner to the opposite corner, and it's like we sometimes get ourselves in a position where we have to try to bail ourselves out with a crazy pass or a crazy shot, and it doesn't always go well. The one thing I noticed in the first half, though, that I do want to point out is I know we shot like 1 for 9 on threes or something in the first half. About 7 or 8 of those were really good shots, though. They were good shot selections that we were taking the open shots when we had them available. They just weren't falling. DJ Wagner had a terrible game scoring wise. I mean, he didn't just take a ton of shots, but he wasn't hitting. Nelly Davis wasn't hitting. Like Boogie wasn't hitting in the first half. He had several 3-point attempts in the first half and missed them all. He made a couple in the second half, but like the first half was just weird, but I liked our shot selection though. So I do want to point that out, even though they weren't falling at first. I liked our shot selection. It didn't feel like we were getting late in the shot clock and somebody was just, dribble, step back 3 for no reason. We had 1 or 2 of those, but it wasn't as bad as we'd seen kind of in some of the first couple of games. So that looked a little better. That said, though, there were some questionable driving attempts, if that makes sense, where we got ourselves in a position in the lane where we really shouldn't have tried to take the shot. Probably should have tried to find an open guy to kick out to and just threw up some ugly something. And sometimes we get fouled and sometimes it would just be ugly. So those are some of the growing pains. I think Thiero does not need to be our leading scorer. I love the guy. Don't get me wrong. He's athletic as all get out and can really get up and hammer it with anybody. But you've got guys on the team that should be able to score the ball better and should be your go-to guys to score. You shouldn't have to rely on the athleticism only of Adu Thiero to try to get you a bucket from time to time. It's just you got to have the other guys make shots when they do get those shots available. I appreciate what he was able to do in this game. He took a lot of shots, made a few of them, and then in the second half made a few more. Big Z was the story of this game, in my opinion, with what he was able to do in the second half. We can talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But overall, the fundamental side, there's things to be worked on, but then there's also things that you can look at in this game and be proud of that we did well. Our defense played pretty well in the first half and then even better in the second half. Still some miscommunication from time to time and let a couple open dunks happen when we got to get discipline on our transition defense. We don't get back fast enough after a bucket, and we definitely don't get back fast enough after a turnover. Got to shore that up. That was the one big glaring thing to me on defense that we didn't do well. But outside of that, half-court defense for us is really solid. A few mistakes here and there, but it's stuff that can be easily corrected, like the fundamental portions of it and the way they communicate and rotate. They do well on defense. Holding a team underneath 50 points, I don't care who it is a pretty good showing for an entire game. So defensively, they had a decent game. Offensively, it was shaky in the first half, got better in the second half. But the other thing I want to talk about before we kind of dive into each player is the fact that you really didn't have a lot of bigs in this game with Brazil going down early, and he was playing phenomenally at first. He was kind of the highlight of the first half, and then he got injured, and then the first half was just bleh. He was playing really well. He's done more for this team early on than I think a lot of people expected because of how well he's been rebounding the ball. It feels like he's got his physicality back. That's the one thing I kind of wanted to touch on. He didn't feel like he was a very physical player last year. I feel like he's finally kind of got that confidence back in himself to play physical basketball, whether it's defensive around the rim, shot blocking, protection, things like that, or on the offensive side of the ball. You can tell he's trying to go get his on those offensive rebounds, things like that. He had a really nice putback dunk. Was having a good game and unfortunately tweaked his ankle, so hopefully he's not out long. And then the other one, Jonas Adu, played 4 or 5 minutes in this game. You could tell he wasn't really 100%, was not able to go as well, and then he didn't play in the second half either. So those are some things that I think if they were able to play the whole game, you'd probably seen a little bit better output underneath. But Big Z stepped up big in the second half and made it rain from 3, and that's the story of the game for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and looking at it, Pigpen's got a point here. I think he feel like this is the entire Razorback Nation when it comes to basketball. Man, it's irritating. It's hard to brag to Kentucky fans. Need something. I agree, and I think it's going to get better. Like we said, once this chemistry develops, it comes game by game, and it's going to be a slow start. And I know that's tough for Arkansas fans to see. But you've got to remember the timeline. You look at it. It's been 7-ish months since all this transpired and Coach Cal got here and these players come in. And, as great of a coach as Coach Cal is, he can't work miracles. And this is going to take time. He even told you that. So, I'm going to still support him, and you can see the improvement game by game. But like you said, some of these other guys are going to have to step up. I think once Nelly Davis finds his shot and gets in a groove, you'll see some improvement there, and that's going to be big. But
they're getting open looks. They're doing a good job. They're actually getting better at finding the open man and taking the open shots than they were even against Kansas back in the exhibitions and against Baylor, for example. They're doing better. You can see the growth literally game by game. You can actually palpably see the growth. It's just not always materializing into good offense yet. But to me, I can see where that trajectory can get to and the potential that we've got. This team can be really, really good. We just got to find a way to get there sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Yeah, you've got 3-game stretch here between now and when you play Illinois on Thanksgiving that, use that time, to continue to find that chemistry and get better. But as we look at some quick stats here, we mentioned the tale of two halves. Shooting the basketball, first half, 29.4% from the field, 18.2% from three, and 80% from the free throw line. And then you jump over to the second half, 63.6% from the field, 66.7% from the three, thanks to Big Z, and 33.3% from the free throw line. So struggling the free throws in the second half. But yeah, in the second half, you saw Nelly Davis hit 1 of 3 from 3-point line, 1 of 1 for Boogie Flan, 5 of 6 for Big Z. And that's what Coach Cal talked about. If you remember, after the Lipscomb game, he was very specific. He said, we need to be shooting around 23 to 25 threes a game and hitting 8 to 9 of them. Well, you went 10 of 23 for this game. That's what he's wanting to see. Now, yes, we need to see more from, other aspects of the game. The thing that I think irritated me most in the first half was I was watching guys would just go down and, act like they're driving the lane and then stop and pull up and do some mid-range jumper. Just go to the hole and make them foul. You're the more athletic team. From a physicality standpoint, our players, take it to the rack and get fouled. I mean, that's what you need to do, especially against a team like this against Troy. Yeah, they have some good players, but at the end of the day, you're the better team. So take it to them. Get their guys in foul trouble. And, we were settling for some mid-range jumpers in the first half that I was like, why aren't we just not finishing to the rim? And I don't know. And I think that'll come. Like you said, I want to see more, though, of the Boogie Flan that we saw against Kansas, where he was, he was a great combination of he was slashing and attacking and kicking out and sharing the ball. But it seems like these past few games, even though, he had quietly had 17 points against Baylor, he quietly had 12 points last night. I think he's trying to be more of a passing point guard. And Cal said he's had to have that conversation with him about trying to balance that. He has the ability to score. He is a fantastic scoring guard. But also, being aware that you've got to share the ball and put your other teammates in a good position. And I think the perfect combination of that is what you saw against Kansas. And I think Boogie needs to get back to that, and you'll see the success. Yeah, he's putting up decent numbers, 12 points, 17 points. But, I mean, he had 20-something points against Kansas, but he also had, I believe, 7 or 8 assists as well. So, I mean, when he gets back to playing that style of ball, I think you'll see more success.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I think a lot of it, too, though, is trying to help other guys get in rhythm early in the season. He's making some good passes. We've made some ugly passes here and there, had some turnover issues in this game. Kind of had some turnover issues in every game so far. Nothing dramatic, but still things that we need to get a little bit better on. I think a little bit of that does come down to the chemistry and not really kind of being on the same page with guys who are running the court. There was a transition ball. I remember that got thrown way over the head of, I can't remember even, I think it was Boogie that was trying to get to it, or maybe Nelly Davis. One of the bigs threw it down. Anyway, there's some issues on some of those things that have got to get cleaned up. But overall, it's hard to get a decent amount of assists when you're finding the open guys. They're just bricking them off the back of the rim or missing entirely, whether it was a three or a mid-range or whatever. Even a lot of our shots when he was feeding the ball inside to Big Z or to Brazil early, they just weren't falling off of the initial attempt. I know Brazil had a couple of putbacks, one off his own miss and then one off of another miss inside where he had that putback dunk. But they're not going to count as assists that way, even though there were some good passes that led up to the ball being into the rim there. So I feel like Boogie's fine. The one thing I saw in the first half is he took some good shots when he was creating his own. They just didn't fall. There was 2 or 3 mid-range pull-ups he had that I actually liked his pull-up game there, where he was driving to the rim, had a guy, kind of on his heels backing up. He stops on a dime, pulls up a wide open shot, just didn't hit it. He hit those in the Kansas game. He wasn't missing those in the Kansas game. So if he hits those, he's closer to probably 20 points in this game just off 2 or 3 of those alone. He missed 2 or 3 free throws. I know at one point he missed both free throws of one appearance to the line. So there's another 2 points that he didn't get. He didn't miss free throws against Kansas. So this was a little bit, to your point, a little uncharacteristic compared to what we saw against Kansas. But I don't think it's necessarily a balance issue specifically. I think he's doing fine on his shot selection and his aggressiveness. There was just a few shots that I thought were great takes that just didn't fall. You just saw a few more points there, a few more points from the line. You're talking about more of an offensive outpouring from him if a couple of those things happen. And then if a couple of the other guys where he was getting inside and kicking it out for a three, a few of those fall, he's at 7 or 8, 9 assists again. And you're saying this is the Boogie that we saw against Kansas. So it's close. The execution from all facets, whether it's him hitting shots or somebody else hitting shots off of a pass from him, it really boils down to hitting shots. I mean, and you just, you spattered it off a second ago on the lines from the first half compared to the second half. Overall, the game doesn't look that bad if you see these percentages from a high-level view, 43% basically from the field on the game, and then 43.5 from three. Really, that sounds great. That sounds ideal. Like you had a really good showing, a good
You'll take it every
offense.
time.
You'll take that every time. But the way it happened kind of sucked because the first half looked so bad, and then the second half looked so good, I guess you could say.
Well, it's like you try to do that against an SEC opponent, you might be in such a hole that even though you shoot that well in the second half, you might not be able to climb out of it.
You can't claw out of it potentially. So you need a little bit more of that consistency throughout the entire game, or, to your point, you can get yourself down in a hole and get rattled and maybe not hit those shots as streaky in the second half. I mean, you can't count on shooting 60% from three for a half to pull you out of a hole that you shot 18% in the first half. You need that balance across the entire game and shoot, 30, 35% across the entirety. And if you can get to 40%, great. But it just needs to be on a more consistent basis. Yeah, free throws. I've really ate some crow over the last few games because, again, that Kansas game, I think we were 21 or 24 or something like that on free throws. Very good percentage. And since then, it hasn't been that great. So got to get that nailed back down. We've proved that we can do it. We just got to get to the line more often. 14 free throw attempts against a lower level team where we should have been getting fouled more and driving to the rim more. Realistically, that wasn't enough, in my opinion. We probably should have been closer to that 20 mark. Should have been a little bit more aggressive, to your point earlier. So I agree that, there's a lot you can learn from these early on games where we've had moments of greatness and moments of weakness, if you will. You kind of get both of those right now. And that's what Cal said you were going to see. This team's going to show flashes where they look awesome, and that's what you want to replicate. And they're going to show flashes where they look terrible, like you can tell that they've never played before together and things like that, or that you've got a lot of young players that aren't quite as used to the college game and college speed and college size. So there's a lot of learning going on from all facets, coaches, players, transfers, all of it together. And I think it can culminate to a good team. Just with what we've seen, everybody knows the potential's there. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of this team. We just got to get the offensive consistency there, a little bit better on the transition defense, and we're close, man. Everybody's, hitting the panic button for some reason. This wasn't even a bad game. It really wasn't. It was just a bad half. Get a little bit more consistent, get a little bit better on that transition D, and this is a 30-point win, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, quickly, you mentioned earlier, Big Z, Heck of a game for him. 22 minutes, 19 points in 22 minutes. Man goes 6 of 8 from the field. All those being 6 of 7 from 3, 2 rebounds, 4 blocks. I mean, man was doing it all, and he was coming off the bench. Cal said he did that on purpose. He wants him to, work a little bit harder, kind of get that spot back. But, I kind of agree here with Big Pen and what he's saying. Thero, most surprising player. I think you're seeing what they really expected out of him at Kentucky last year. He didn't have the biggest game against Kansas, but ever since then, TCU, Lipscomb, Baylor, last night, he's been our go-to guy. And then Richmond, you're seeing more of him game by game. He's a very physical and aggressive player for Arkansas. Like, you think about that Baylor game, he came in and got that technical, but I think that made the team play harder. It felt like there was a little bit more edge to the team after that happened. And so I think you're seeing some of these things develop. But yeah, but to Seth's point, you can't count on Thero to be the guy that bails you out every game by just, being a freak athlete and being able to just do insane things and get these points. So it's going to be interesting to see as the development continues the season. Arkansas will be back in action next Monday against Pacific, another one of those games to, who knows if we'll see Brazil or not. I'm not sure. It depends on how rehab on that ankle goes between now and then. I'm going to say probably not. Adu, we don't know for sure. Coach said his injury that he was dealing with preseason is fully healed. He's just having to work back through and get in game shape. You got to think he missed, I think they said about 5 weeks of practice, dealing with that injury and recovering. So he's got to get back in game shape and play through some of that soreness and pain that he's got to deal with. So we may or may not see him. But, as we continue, like I said, they'll be back in action on Monday. We mentioned signing day earlier. Arkansas is up to the number 2 signing class in basketball with Malik Thomas announcing his commitment, and then both him and Darius Acuff signing yesterday. Both those guys, number 1, number 2 in their respective categories, point guard, shooting guard. That puts us the number 2 overall class behind just Duke, and they, I believe, 24/7 Sports, they have 1 5-star and 4 4-stars. Isaiah Sealy, is making his commitment on Saturday, and I have a good feeling that I think he might be leaning towards Arkansas. That would be another good one. I believe his name is Chris Sinek, another 6'11", forward center type player that, is wanting to play with Malik Thomas, I believe. So there's a chance that Arkansas gets him. So this could turn into a very interesting recruiting class for Cal, as he's doing the Calipari thing that we know he did at Kentucky. So as we continue on here, no news for gymnastics as the season is getting kickoff, but as we mentioned, signing day, Arkansas signs the number 2 overall signing class for Arkansas gymnastics this season. We talked about it. It's coach is doing a fantastic thing. You got to love it. And this year, we stepped up our game last year, and you see this year, every single home meet is going to be in Bud Walton. So, get ready to pack the bud for those gymnastics meets. It's going to be a fun one. We'll run quickly through these additions for this 2025 class. You got Avalon Campbell from Oceanside, California. You've got Allison Cucci, the twin sisters Twisters from Rochester, New York. You've got Avery King, Metroplex Gymnastics out of Dallas, Texas. You've got Addison Bear with Prestige Gymnastics out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Bradley Burton out of Houston, Texas. And Riley Jandorf out of Bentonville, Arkansas, right here, a home state girl. So you got a lot of talent coming in there as you continue on. Arkansas soccer, they're back in action tonight. Or not tonight, sorry, Friday night in the first round of the NCAA tournament as they take on Oklahoma State. We will be hosting that, so that they will get that match kicked off on Friday for that first round. So if you don't have anything going on, it's a big weekend for football here in Fayetteville. So if you're in town, get out there and support these girls, as they had a fantastic season. SEC tournament didn't go how everybody thought it would have wanted, but then time to bounce back and, make a run in the tournament that really matters here. Arkansas soccer did have some signings of their own. as they continue to bring in that talent that we know Kobe Hale can do. We'll quickly look through that. They brought in several players. You got forward Madison Rose from Maryland. You've got forward Natalie Wagner from Dallas, Texas. You've got Presley Marvel, a defender from California. You've got Ansley Knuckles, a forward from Arizona. Midfielder forward Villanueva Tua from California. Molly Teed, a forward from Dallas, Texas. Nuria Craig, a defender midfielder from Dallas as well. Several of these from Texas, Dallas area played on FC Dallas. You've got Paige Szymanski, midfielder forward from New York. And so several players coming in. Camila Palacios, a midfielder forward from Texas. That pipeline to Texas is strong for Kobe Hale and this soccer program. If you look at it at the end of the day, after early signing day, Arkansas has the number 2 men's basketball signing class, the number 2 ranked gymnastics class, the number 4 ranked baseball class, the number 4 ranked softball class, and the talent just keeps coming in a lot of the sports. Now we just need to see more of that talent on the football field.
100%.
So, yeah. Any quick thoughts there before we get ready to jump over to football?
No, I was just going to give a shout out to the coaches there, Jordan Weber for gymnastics and Colby Hill for soccer. They've really got their programs kind of on the rise. It seems like the last 2 or 3 years, we've really said their names a lot, that you can really see where they're building these programs. And man, it's just year after year after year, they've gotten better, and they're getting better signing classes and better recruits and better transfers. And we're getting better results. Even though we've had some good years in a row, it's like they keep getting better results outside of SEC soccer games or SEC championship soccer games. That's not been great, but other than that, I mean, you can really tell these teams are going in the right direction and staying consistent. That's big. Not to take, a step forward and then 2 steps back or something like that. That's not happening. So a lot of good things. You got to give those coaches a lot of props. And then obviously, you can't say enough good things about Coach Van Horn and Coach Courtney Deifel. So they've got the Diamond Sports really doing big things, keeping good talent coming in and year out, and providing a lot of fun atmosphere to go to the baseball park or the softball park year in and year out. And there's a reason we're way up the rankings as far as fan attendance in both of those categories. So it's a good thing for a lot of these sports. To your point, though, football, while we're not just terrible, we've got to do better in recruiting. We're always in, the upper 20s in the country, but then you look at it in just the SEC alone, and we're always like, 12th or 13th or 14th or something like that. And that's just not going to bode well with how tough our schedule always is being in the SEC. So you got to get up, towards the top of the SEC in recruiting, and that'll obviously be in the top of the country. But got to find a way to get there, whether it's NIL, winning more games. I don't know. Honestly, the answers there are kind of hard to come by, but hoping it can happen over the next couple of years. We can, kind of get back to a little bit more consistent, prominent football team.
Yeah, 100%. Well, as we get ready to jump over to the preview for Arkansas versus Texas, don't forget to check out Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer made here in Northwest Arkansas at Core in Springdale. Go check them out if you haven't got a chance to. We talk about it all the time on the show. Go check them out. Fantastic things. They got a lot of flavors there. Just came out with their vodka seltzer, which is very good. They got some things in the work that's going to be good. And also, don't forget to check out Jared's Kickin' Sauce, the sauce that's good on everything, especially on Seth's Grilled Cheeses. So go check them out today. And as we get ready to preview this matchup, we're excited to welcome Gerald from Longhorn Republic here to talk about this matchup this weekend. Gerald, how you doing?
Man, I am doing well. How are you all?
Doing good, man. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so I know we jumped on you guys' show before the season began as you were kind of counting down each match, been looking forward or looking towards, the matchups and things of that nature. And, we're here, into this, football season where, you guys are sitting at 8-1, Arkansas sitting at 5-4, kind of up and down the season for us. You guys having that, one loss to Georgia, sitting at, one of the, I think, 3 teams in the SEC with 1 loss. Just a quick, how are you feeling about this matchup coming into Fayetteville this weekend?
I am having PTSD flashbacks from the last time it happened. So I'm not super great, right? My bourbon budget's a little through the roof this week, but that's another conversation. I feel okay. I feel as good as you can. I'm glad it's an 11 a.m. kickoff and not a 7 p.m. kickoff. Let's be real. I think the fans are going to be loud and rowdy and excited, but that extra several hours of lubrication always goes a long way, I think, to create a terrifying environment. I think overall, I'm excited. I think it's in all of the hullabaloo of conference realignment, eradicating some really awesome, things about college football where the Pac-12 is going away and, they're not playing Bedlam anymore and all those weird things. Texas got 2 historic rivalries back with conference realignment, right? Not only do we get A&M, but we get Arkansas as well. And for, folks of my age, folks of my generation, this is something new for us. I started following college football pretty seriously in the early 2000s, and, Texas and Arkansas haven't played a ton, at least on the football field in that period. So it's exciting. As far as the football goes, I feel good. I think if we get the Quinn Ewers of last week, I'll feel a lot better. If we get Quinn Ewers from Georgia, then I'll feel probably a little worse about it. But that's a long answer to say I really don't know how I feel, but I'm excited.
We're kind of right there with you, man. Our team is kind of there's been some good weeks, and then there's been some rough weeks. So it also depends on the Taylor Green that we get, the offensive line that we get, because it's been kind of a coin flip from time to time. The defense that we get, we've had some really good defensive showings against some tough teams, and then absolutely falling flat on defense from time to time. So there's a lot of question marks. We've had some pretty good games, and we've had some pretty rough games. A lot of turnovers have bitten us in the butt. So if we can play some clean ball, there's a chance that we compete. But overall, I'm a little worried about this game, to be honest. You guys have got a very good team, a lot of talent. We've got some talent as well. I don't think we're quite at the same level as the Longhorns are, unfortunately. We don't have quarterbacks sitting at our number 2 spot that would be starting anywhere else, that's for sure. But anyways, I'm excited. This is always a fun game. I've got some relatives that are diehard Texas Longhorns fans, so that'll be it's always fun. We watched the game back in 2021 when the butt whipping occurred the opposite direction. I'm scared you guys are out for revenge on that. So it's got me nervous, just kind of based off the history of the last couple of matchups. Think back to I think it was the Texas Bowl back when Bielema was here. And I think
borderline erotic, I believe, is what it was described as.
Yeah, it was crazy. So there's been some tough matchups over the last couple of times we've played y'all. So I'm scared you guys are out for revenge. This is probably going to be the year that it happens, but I'm hoping it doesn't.
They're like I think 9 guys that were on that team, or starters on that team, that are still around, most of them in the trenches. And so they should be up for this game, right? They you don't go on the road and get embarrassed you don't get embarrassed like that anywhere and forget that quickly. I wasn't even on the team, and I'm still God, that sucked. That was a terrible night. So I can't imagine that the fellas that actually had to suit up and play that game, how they felt. So yeah, I think there is, and Sark is trying to downplay it, but you can tell there's a little bit of an edge to him this week, and so I'm hoping that they come out and again, outside of Georgia, and I think Georgia did some weird things schematically, and we can talk about that if you want to, but outside of really Georgia, and I think Vandy does some weird things as well. Texas really hasn't blinked in the face of any opposition this year. They went to the big house, and Michigan's terrible, but they went to the big house and kicked in the door. They went into Dallas and just beat OU up and down the field. So it's outside of a couple of games, it's really, Texas hasn't blinked much this year. And so I'm curious to see. This is going to be probably the roughest environment they've been in all year. So I'm curious to see how they play out and how the nerves are on Saturday morning.
Yeah. I think for us, like Seth said it perfect earlier, you don't know which team you're going to get, because it's you could get the team that came out and, showed up and beat Tennessee and showed up and put a lot of points on Mississippi State, or you could, hopefully not get the team that came out super flat against LSU, came out super flat against Ole Miss, and, didn't look much better than the teams from last year. And so I think that's the hard part for kind of judging this game. Because, I mean, if you really look at Arkansas' schedule game by game, it's almost like very pattern. Like, if you take out the UAPB game, you look at Oklahoma State. We didn't win, but we came out and played really well in that game. You come back home.
Should have won.
Yeah, should have won. Came back home, played terrible, but got the win against a UAB team. Go on the road, get a win against Auburn, and look okay. You come back home, or you go to A&M or Dallas, play A&M, look pretty bad. Come home, play Tennessee, get the big win, go into your bye week, come out, look flat against LSU, and you're like, man, what happened to this team after a big win? Go on the road to Mississippi State. You put up a lot of points. Then you come back home against Ole Miss and you lay another dud. And so, if you're going by the pattern, this should be a week where we get up and look a little bit better, but I just don't know if that's the case.
It's going to be interesting. I think the big question for me, I wouldn't be shocked to see Arkansas do a little bit of what like Mississippi State did to Texas, where Texas's big advantage is in between the tackles, right? They've got size, they've got talent, and Mississippi State and Jeff Lebby, he's I don't like him as a person, but he's an incredible offensive coach, and he like spread Texas out and then ran right down the middle. And so with the talent that Arkansas has at quarterback, Jaquindon Jackson's a guy that Texas fans are very familiar with. That pairing, I think, could do some damage if that's the plan that they come out with. So I'm curious to see, what Arkansas decides to do offensively, because that's a plan that's shown to work. Mississippi State put up yards, put up points against Texas, and they've shown that they can be gotten by the run. The Florida yardage is a little bit of a kind of a misnomer, because like all of it, well, I say that all of it. Florida rushed for like 197 yards on Texas, but like 80 or 90 of that came after they pulled the starters. Like there's like that like caveat there that you have to like, was it really 200 yards or was it like 100 yards? But again, Arkansas, Jaquindon Jackson is a heck of a ball player. I was super excited when he committed to Texas originally out of high school. Just an absolute stud. And Green is that dude. Like he is probably the most talented quarterback Texas has faced this year. Like, I'm just going to put it out there. Looking at, Diego Pavia is good, but I don't know if he's, Taylor Green's level. Diego Pavia's got that more kind of Johnny Manziel unpredictable thing going on. So I think a pure like dual threat quarterback that Texas has played, I think Green might be it thus far. So it'll be an interesting test for the Texas defense.
Yeah. I think the curious thing, you mentioned Jeff Lebby, but I'm interested to see, what'll come from the offensive mind of one Bobby Petrino, who we know is a fantastic play caller.
Yep.
I mean, historically, and you see the games Arkansas has had success, he's drawn up some fantastic game plans. And like you said, with Taylor Green, if we can execute and, it's to be seen. I mean, according to, the injury report, he's probable, still recovering from that injury versus Ole Miss. So coming off bye week, he's been able to practice things. So to the extent is he 100% is going to be, I think, a big part of it too. Like how much can he actually do the things that led to success, get out of the pocket, be able to move, because that's going to be big. I mean, because if he's, struggles to move a little bit, you saw that against LSU, then turns one-dimensional, it might not be the best. Your thoughts there, Seth?
I was thinking the same thing. If he's able to run 100% like he has been in the games we've played well, there's a chance. You can kind of pair that with hopefully Braylon Russell's ready to go and healthy. I think he's been upgraded to probable now, was listed as questionable. And then Jaquindon is also listed as probable. And we haven't seen him in a hot minute. He's been out the last couple of weeks with injury. So getting him back is going to be big. If we can run the ball between kind of that trio and then maybe sprinkle in a Rodney Hill or whatever, Rashad DeBinion, we've got some other backs that can tote the load from time to time. If you can run the ball well enough with that trio and the offensive line can get enough push, that's the thing that really scares me the most. Is I think Texas is better in the trenches, especially their defense versus our O-line. I'm scared running the ball is going to be hard. And if running the ball is hard, we're not going to be able to keep our defense off the field. We're going to have some issues converting third downs and stuff because we're going to be in third and long a lot. If we can run the ball, this has the potential to be anybody's game if we're able to run the ball and extend some drives. keep our defense off the field a little bit, control the time of possession. That, to me, that's really the only way you win this game. It's very similar to what you did against Tennessee. On paper, Texas is better than us. Let's be real. I hate to admit it, but you guys are. Y'all just are. So if we're able, if we give Quinn Ewers 1,000 possessions and opportunities, he's going to score on 800 of them, whatever. So we've got to really limit the possessions and capitalize on ours. Come away with points the majority of the time, whether it's field goals. I don't care, as long as you're, burning 4, 5, 6 minutes off the clock, keeping your defense at least fresh enough to where they're not just absolutely gassed by the fourth quarter, and then you guys run another 180 yards up on us just in the fourth quarter alone. We've seen that happen before. To me, that's one of the biggest keys of the game is, can Arkansas run the ball to be able to extend drives and milk some time off the clock to take some pressure off of our defense? That's the only way it's going to happen. I'm a little nervous about it, though.
Yeah, that's the matchup that I'm interested to watch. I was looking at some advanced stats, and Arkansas has really been solid overall, creating that 3.5-ish yards, right? I think they're averaging 3.3 line yards a rush, where the Texas defense is giving up 2.8. So that's the matchup, the trenches.
100%.
You can talk all the scheming and all of the offensive coordinator, but the reason why Texas got pushed around in Fayetteville last time is because they got pushed around, right? The reason why Texas prioritized recruiting in the trenches is because of that Arkansas game 3 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever it was, right? Texas prioritized that, signed multiple 4 and 5 stars on the offensive and defensive lines. That is, I think, the matchup that's going to show it. Football, as fancy as it gets, is still won and lost in the trenches. And that, I think, is going to be the thing to watch on Saturday.
Yeah, so, I hinted at earlier, looking at, I've got the latest of Thursday as of 7 p.m. Central Time injury report. Is there any of those guys that surprised you, or most of those guys kind of are for you, or y'all were expecting to be out?
Yeah, none of those are really too surprising for me. Texas continues to be thin at running back. I think there are 3 running backs on that injury report as out for the foreseeable. 2 lost in preseason and 1 lost an eye injury during the bye week, which is really weird. Colton Vasek, I think, is the one guy that I think I would love to have back, just because he is really aggressive in the trenches. He's a guy who can set the edge, and he's kind of one of those just high motor is an overused cliche, but that's the best way to describe him. He's one of my buddies coached against him in high school and described him as damn near unblockable in their playoff games. That's the kind of guy that you want in a matchup like this. So Texas is going to be fine. They've got Colin Simmons, who was a 5-star guy. They've got Trey Moore, who came in from Texas, from UTSA in the offseason. They've got a solid group of guys along the edges, which I think is going to be something to watch, because when a quarterback that's got wheels like Green, your edges have to play fundamentally sound. They've got to keep their outside arm free. They've got to, contain that those field reversals that'll happen from timing. So that's the one I think that to call out that I wish would be there on Saturday for sure.
Yeah, kind of on the flip side of that, and Seth can chime in here in a minute. For Arkansas, you look at that injury report. 3 defensive backs out for Arkansas after just what happened against Ole Miss. It does not seem to bode well for Arkansas in the secondary. One of those Jalen Braxton, he's been out since, the Oklahoma State game. So not necessarily you miss him, but it's not like depth-wise that you haven't had to deal with. But then now you have Selman Bridges, who, he was a young guy that came in from Texas that, Arkansas was, I think so, some of us were surprised, he committed here. It's interesting to see he's out. And then, Anthony Switzer, another guy that came in the offseason via the transfer portal, out, so that with Arkansas already struggling against the pass, you look at the playbook, or the schematics were laid out against LSU, on how to beat this Arkansas secondary. It didn't seem like there was much improvements made to that against Ole Miss. And then now you're down an additional 2 defensive backs. In as far as when you think about it, depth, Switzer probably plays a little bit more snaps than Bridges did. But, you looking at that, I'm afraid that yours could do similar to what Dart did and carve up this defense a little bit.
Yeah, that's my thought exactly. That's going to be a big point of emphasis, I think, on the defensive side of the ball for the Hogs. The only way you really mitigate that is you have to get pressure on the quarterback very, very fast. I know you got Sark is a genius. Let's be real. And to Caleb's point, the tape is out there on kind of how to attack us in the passing game successfully. You can hit deep balls from time to time. We're susceptible to that if there's enough time, but getting the ball out fast to the flats, if we're not playing press coverage enough, you can nickel and dime us all day long. It's happened time and time again against LSU. Ole Miss did it too, and then Ole Miss was hitting deep balls too. That was just a horrible game. But to me, that's one of the biggest kind of talking points on this Razorback defense right now. They were doing pretty well early on in the year, and then lost a couple of guys to injury. Scheme-wise, I think people figured us out a little bit, and so that hasn't helped out. On the flip side, our defensive line, in my opinion, has actually played better the second half of the season, or the middle part of the season, if you will, than early on. And so I'm hoping that they can kind of provide a little bit of a counterbalance there. Force Quinn Ewers to be uncomfortable, make some inaccurate throws just due to timing and being able to like plant his feet, things that's the only way you really counter the fact that our defensive back position and even our linebackers are a little bit shallow right now, and frankly a little bit out-talented. Outspeed, out-talent, whatever you want to call it. You got to make up for that somewhere. And to me, the only place that's going to be possible is our defensive line, which has some good players. Some players have been around for a minute. Landon Jackson's phenomenal, going to be an NFL caliber player. Eric Gregory, Cam Ball, those are guys that you're probably going to hear names called on Sundays from time to time. 3 NFL caliber defensive linemen, and Landon's one of your edge rushers. Eric Gregory and Cam Ball are kind of some of your interior guys, but they have the ability to really disrupt an offense if they can. Y'all's offensive line is also solid, so I think that we already talked about it. The game is going to be won in the trenches, kind of for both teams on both sides at the same time. I know that anybody that knows anything about football knows that that's predominantly where games are won and lost. There's a lot of things that happen in turnovers, and it's a skill position if you can't control the ball and all that kind of stuff. And if you have drop passes and issues in your skill positions, fine. But predominantly, if you can win or lose the trenches, that's a big deal. So we lost him. Don't know what happened there, but
yeah, we'll see if he jumps back in real quick.
Anyways, that's going to be some of the biggest things to me is, can we force Quinn Ewers to be uncomfortable enough and miss some throws that bail us out from maybe having poor coverage? Because if you got poor coverage, if you can force the quarterback to throw the ball a little quicker than he wants to and have a bad throw, it can bail you out of that poor coverage. We've seen that a few times throughout the year too. So to me, that's kind of the defensive keys, is make Quinn Ewers uncomfortable and throw the ball a little faster than he wants to. And then offensively, we have to be able to run the ball and limit the possessions that Texas has.
I think that's good. I mean, that's a good summation of it. And, Georgia kind of wrote the book on that, and nobody has the athletes that Georgia has. So like, it's hard to put anybody in that same sentence, but, Georgia did a really good job of disguising blitzes. They had, corners that lined up in man and then, like press man and then blitzed a half a second after the snap, so the quarterback looked away from him. Some twist stunts, some different kinds of different movement along the offensive or along the defensive line that caused some confusion for Texas. So there is a recipe out there for creating that level of confusion, and Quinn Ewers struggled with it in that game, and he couldn't really get Texas. Sark pulled him for a couple of series. So there is a recipe to do it. There is Georgia did it to quite a bit of an effect. So there's that being said. And you mentioned Landon Jackson. I'm still not over that recruitment. Like that's one that still hurts me to this day. Thankfully, the little brother decided to make the right choice, so we'll be okay with that. But I'm scared of that dude. I think it's gonna be watching him and Kelvin Banks is gonna be the matchup I'm really excited to watch.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's a matchup that I think us as Arkansas fans aren't going in too hopeful. Like you mentioned, this is a different team than we saw 3 years ago here in Fayetteville. With how the season's been, kind of like you said, you had that game against Georgia, but you were able to learn from that. I'm sure Sark was able to game plan against that. And it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think it's going to be fun. Yeah, like you mentioned, it's not a night game. It's 11 a.m. early kickoff. that might have been different, if these two teams were, you guys were still sitting at the spot you're in, but, say Arkansas wins that Oklahoma State game, doesn't drop wins one of LSU or Ole Miss, and you're looking at a potential, higher matchup that could have more implications as far as not only the SEC, but the college football playoffs.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is going to, and part of the advantage of this 11 o'clock spot though, is it's going to draw a lot of eyes. I mean, it's a historic game. It's a historic matchup. And that's again, what playing in the SEC is all about. It's the all-time helmet games that Texas has had this year. I wish I had gotten in on season tickets a couple years ago, because those prices are never going to come back to anything where I can afford it with 3 kids. But like Florida at home, going on the road to Arkansas, playing Georgia, those are part of the reason why Texas came to the SEC was to play in these types of matchups. And even at an 11 o'clock spot, this is still a game that people are talking about. This is still a game that people are excited about, just because it is a like the episode says, the rivalry is renewed, right? This is going to be something that we'll see moving forward. And for somebody of, like I said, my generation, this wasn't a rivalry I was ever really exposed to. So getting to see that just feels cool.
Yeah, I completely agree with that about the rivalry being renewed. I think there's some talking points about this game, even outside of just the historical Southwest days. Just based off the last couple of matchups, I mean, it's not like we don't have a history with y'all, at least in recent past. It's not like we've played you guys every year, but there's been a couple of bowl games. There's been some non-conference games just outside of the normal schedule that have been fun to watch for Arkansas fans, especially the last 2 times. But overall, it does give you a little bit of context of, these two teams, what they've kind of developed into over the last 10 years or so, with some coaching changes for you guys, some coaching changes for us, a little bit of history between these two coaches just from that game in 2021. So to me, there's a lot on the line here, with it being kind of an old rivalry for some of the old heads to be excited about, but then some revenge or trying to repeat what has happened in the past. If you're a Hog fan, for example, that there's some things to kind of think about and get fired up for, that this is a winnable game. I mean, heck, man, back in 2021, we were not picked to win that game at all. We were unranked. You guys were number 15 in the country. I mean, we were not supposed to win that game by any stretch of the imagination. Way out-talented, out-coached, all those things, all the talking points, and it didn't go that way. I don't have as good a feeling about this one as I did back in 2021. But that said, I mean, there's a lot riding on this game for both teams. I mean, Arkansas still has to win a game to be bowl eligible. We do believe that's going to happen against Louisiana Tech, but it'd be nice to get it right here. Maybe get a better bowl game with another win or two if we're able to win this one, for example. But then for you guys, I mean, there is playoff implications on pretty much every game from here on out. Let's be real. So it's not like neither team – it's not like the teams don't have anything to play for in this game. Both teams really do. And so I think that provides another level. So there's several things to talk about why this game can be exciting, why it has the potential to be a better game than maybe it looks like on paper, just with the records of the teams and stuff like that. And so I'm glad it's at an 11 o'clock game. To some extent, to your point, there is going to be a lot of eyes on it, with it being one of the better matchups potentially in that time slot. So I'm excited for it. It's going to be a fun game. The weather's supposed to be pretty nice, so that's cool. I think that'll be advantageous for like fan turnout and things like that. So it'll be a good time. I'm scared you guys are going to get a little revenge on us. But the cool thing about that, though, is it sets up the future matchups, in a couple of years. I don't know if this is going to be a year in, year out. I'm still confused on the way the SEC is doing all that crap.
It should be.
But it sets up some cool games in the future to kind of launch from, where the last couple of matchups have been, where this one could land, and then where, the subsequent SEC games could go from here. I mean, there's going to be a lot of future matchups in more rapid succession that we're going to get to talk about over and over and over, and every one of them is going to be fun.
It's again, this is all of the belly aching about conference realignment. A lot of it is valid, right? But like for me as a Texas fan, and for you all as like Arkansas fans, conference realignment, bringing this rivalry back, freaking awesome.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So kind of as we wrap up here, I know the line earlier this week started at 13.5. It looks like it's now shifted a little bit to, a little bit more Texas at favored by 16.5. Gerald, do you have any kind of predictions? Do you think it kind of sticks to that? Is it a little bit of a closer game? Is the 56.5 over under hit, or do you see it being much, lower scoring game? What's your thoughts there?
I'm not a betting person. I've got three sons, so they eat too much. So like that's like any betting money goes to feeding those ruffians. But if I had to, like 14 felt right when it opened. I think for like just being honest, like I think Arkansas is going to be able to score some, but I think if this game turns into a shootout, I think Texas probably is able to win it. And I think that's probably. I'm not predicting the full shootout, but I think in a preview article I wrote, I think it had 35-21 is what I had for the final. So I guess take the under, but the points, I guess. I don't even understand how betting works like fully, but like take the under, I guess.
I could see that. I think it's really going to come down as far as score and betting lines and stuff like that goes. It's if both teams play clean and there's not a lot of like turnovers within the 20 that somebody gets a real easy touchdown off of, or scooping scores or pick sixes or funky things like that. If it's kind of a clean game where it's fully depending on punts and then offensive possessions going, 60, 70, 80 yards or whatever, I would probably take the under on the over under. What that margin at 50, what'd you say, 56.5?
Yeah.
However, if this game has some turnovers, which it's very likely to based off recent play of Arkansas, I would go over that and think some easy touchdowns happen, and then one team score is going to get ballooned or something just because of some things like that. So I think if I was betting it, I would probably actually take the over, the money line there, whatever that's called, the point total. But then just as far as the spread of each team, I feel like 16's a lot. Based off our showing against Ole Miss, which was at home, and LSU, which was at home, I'm kind of nervous. Playing good teams at home hasn't really been a good thing for us this year, like you would hope. So, I don't know. I don't want to say it, but I feel like Texas actually covers a spread. I hate to pick against us that bad, but I don't know. I got a bad feeling.
Yeah, I feel that same sentiment. It's really hard to have confidence after what happened to Ole Miss. But like, we've all talked about, with this being a rivalry game, Pittman mentioned the importance of trying to get his team to understand the rivalry game. Like even he mentioned showing him film from, I believe, a game from '69. He said some of the guys chuckled about it, kind of, with the quality of the film, of course, but, showed him that game, I believe a game from '94. And then, of course, the latest games, the Texas Bowl, the 2021 game, and then so he's trying to get this team to get up for it. And he mentioned that matchup in Fayetteville in 21. He said he could tell it was different from the moment they walked in the stadium, just kind of the atmosphere and things. So hopefully we can replicate that, but unfortunately, being realist here, Texas probably takes the win in this one. We'd love to see the upset and, like you said, get our bowl eligibility right here, but unfortunately, I don't think that happens this weekend for Arkansas.
If it's a repeat of 2021, my wife's gonna have to take the kids to my parents' house or something. That's all I'm saying. I will. It'll be a bad afternoon.
This is a revenge game for you guys, and I think it's going to happen. Y'all have the team and the pieces in place to do some damage. We're kind of reeling at a couple of positions right now. Our defense has not played as well the last half of the season as they did the first half of the season. Offensively, we've just been up and down, and you don't really know what you're going to get. Some days it just seems like we're clicking on all cylinders, can run the ball, throw the ball, all of it. Some days our offensive line just doesn't hold up, and it makes everything else struggle. So you don't know what you're going to get on that side of it. But to me, my gut feeling just feels like Sark is going to get his revenge from that 2021 season when you guys were supposed to be better than y'all's year went, and we were supposed to be worse than our year went, and it just didn't pan out that way. Thankfully for us, unfortunately for you guys, but to me, this is y'all's year. I hate that it's your first year in the SEC. Puts a bad taste in my mouth that you guys are doing as well as you are. Thankfully, Oklahoma is struggling into the SEC like they should. But you guys have had a phenomenal year. You got to give Coach Sark a lot of credit for the team he's put together down there. And then you got to give guys like Quinn Ewers a lot of credit for coming back. He had the potential to leave.
Yep.
He really came back, and he's done good things. Had a few struggles here and there, but overall, I mean, I think he is the leader of y'all's team. You've got a lot of talent around him, but he's done a phenomenal job leading that team with the guys around him really stepping up and playing for him. And then when Manning's had to come in and cover, it's not a big drop off.
Some, depending on the corner of the internet you're on, some might say there's actually a step up depending on which Texas fans you're asking about it. But no, I think you're right. Ewers is a guy who isn't like, he's not naturally a very vocal, outspoken guy, and he's had to kind of get over that a little bit over the last couple of years and really step into that leadership role. Like quarterbacks just can't be the guy in the back of the room. It just is what it is. And so yeah, him coming back and really, the Georgia game was tough, but I think there's a lot that goes into that. But he's done really well for himself. He wasn't able to stay healthy. That was part of the reason why he came back. But as he's getting back into the season, I think he's priming himself for a strong finish to it. So it's exciting. And again, I think Sark went on a little bit of a revenge tour last year, kind of the last year in the Big 12, kind of settling all the scores, and so he's got a little bit of that in him. I'll say that. So if he's feeling some kind of way, and I'll say it, the wedding ring is back on the finger. So he's in a good spot right now mentally. So I think it's a good thing. It might be a good weekend for the Horns.
Yeah. So you look at it, number 3, Texas heads to Fayetteville. Kickoff 11 a.m. this Saturday. We thank you, Gerald, for joining us. Before we get out of here, let the people know where they can find you at, and as we get ready for this matchup Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to catch everything that we're doing, covering the Longhorns, you can check us out on Twitter. I still won't call it X. I'm sorry. So Twitter at Longhorn Pod. We just got set up on Blue Sky as well. I think a lot of folks are moving over there as well. So it's still just Longhorn Pod over there on Blue Sky. Me personally, at GH Goodridge, anywhere you can find me, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, all of that good stuff. So yeah, check us out. Love to have you as a part, and we'll be live tweeting and tweeting dumb stuff all Saturday afternoon.
I was about to say that'll be the same here. I was going to say it too, for Arkansas fans, that are moving over to Blue Sky. We got set up over there today, still Hogs on the Hill. Go check that out. It seems like Gerald said, more and more people are headed that way. Carbon copy of Twitter, essentially, and then instead of a bird, you have a butterfly. So at the end of the day, where the people's at, it's where we're going to be. But again, Arkansas will take on Texas Saturday at 11 a.m. with the kickoff at 11 a.m. Weather should be nice. A nice 61 degrees projected for kickoff. Perfect football weather.
Beautiful.
For Fayetteville, Arkansas. And, before we get out of here, we thank everybody for tuning in today, for Gerald for joining us. Go check out his page. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Go check us out there. And, we'll be back here on Sunday to recap the game and talk about, if we get the win, the excitement, if we don't, what went wrong, and, where does Arkansas go from here. So until then, we'll see you guys on Sunday.